Well, thank you, folks. It's 6:04. I'm going to call our meeting to order, and we are going to record this because we anticipate, even if folks can't be with us right now on this lovely evening, they may be interested in the future in what we talk about here. So you're on camera and being recorded for posterity. Know this. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go around and just quick do introductions, and if we can start online, I'd like to do that. Tony, can we start with you?
Yeah, hi, Tony Arvidson. I'm the Vice President for Lancer Hospitality and based out of Minnesota.
Thank you, Tony. How about Michael John?
Hello, Michael John Pease. I'm the Executive Director of Saint Paul Parks Conservancy.
Thank you. And in the room here, John, can we start with you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jonathan Harum. I'm in live in East Como Boulevard and am a newer member of the board.
Hey, I'm Shava Kiki. I'm the Executive Director at District 10. I work here in Streetcar Station. I live down in Frogtown.
Hi, I'm Laura Oyen. I am on the District 10 board, Sub-District 1 over by Lingblomston, and I'm coordinating the Como Neighborhood History Project. So I think there'll be some interesting questions and things we can talk about tonight. So thanks.
And I'm Maggie Zimmerman, your land use chair, and I live in Sub-District 2, right up by John. So we have, well, actually, let me just say, are there any additions, corrections, or any other changes folks would like to make to the agenda tonight? Additions or corrections? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, we will adopt the agenda as it stands. Our first section is the community section, so I will just, for posterity, ask if there are any community issues that folks would like brought up that are not in the agenda. Seeing none, and nobody who's not a board member here, we will just move straight into our new business. So I want to welcome Tony Arvidson from Lancer Hospitality. Tony has been orbiting around dock and paddle and catching all of our feelings about the pavilion and dock and paddle or spring cafe or whatever iteration since Lancer took over. And so we like to do regular check-ins. I think historically Comoians, what do we call ourselves?
That sounds good.
That sounds great. The Comoians. You know, people feel a lot of ownership, a lot of pride, and a lot of connection to the pavilion space. And so we know that it is the challenge, and that is to the challenge and benefit of any business there. They have a built-in customer base, and those customers feel very much like they would like to weigh in on what happens in this communal space. And then we also have Michael John Pease here from Saint Paul Parks Conservancy. And I think that the goal for tonight is to kind of have just an open discussion about what is on the docket for Lancer and for dock and paddle in the coming season here, and also to talk a little bit about some potential partnerships or just sort of thinking about dock and paddle in the pavilion as part of the wider park network and not just like a business that plopped down in the middle of it there. So with that, Tony, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Maggie. And thank you for allowing me to come to this meeting and talk a little bit about some of the past things that we've done and also sort of where our focus is. One thing I think we can cross off our list that was something that was needed for a very long time was a new parking lot. And I have to say, thank you so much to the city and the community and neighborhood for, helping with, mandating some actions that were getting us in the right direction, because as you know, there was limited parking and it was, falling apart per se. So that was a good thing. It also, it did impact our business a tad, ours and across the street with the golf course. But I think that we did a really good job with mediating sort of help and support with using each other's parking lot during the summer. So that went really good. And I'm happy to say that I felt like it was less of a constraint on the community and also the musicians that wanted to play there. So it went good. Another thing that we're going to be rolling out this summer is we've got an expanded food menu. And as you know, through the COVID years, when we first took over, to all of our surprise in the world, it really hurt us in focusing on who we imagined who we were going to be in this neighborhood community. And so right, I would say smack in the middle of, winding down to COVID, we made the determination to rebrand ourselves to Dock and Paddle and give it sort of some identity and community engagement. So off the Dock and Paddle play, on the ideas, we're going to add some more, items like, more what you would catch in a lake and or see on a dock. And so we're going to add like shrimp po' boys, tuna, spicy tuna wontons. We're going to add some northern pike cakes, and we're also planning on doing some fresh oyster bars on weekends to kind of liven the place up and do some fun things. We're also going to introduce some fun appetizers during events, some shareables. We don't want to just be, a meal process to have a meal during a music event. We want to have some fun charcuterie boards and something that you can enjoy like a couple while they're listening to music and having fresh cocktails and fun things there. So a new cocktail menu, a new appetizer menu, and more food that are geared more about the Dock and Paddle, and then fresher, healthier salad options.
Nice.
On top of that, we also this year have focused, because as you know, we book between 100 and 120 events within the promenade, and I would say 95% of those are musicals. This year, we're going to concentrate on the smaller piece bands, and versus the larger production bands where you've got, a 6-piece, 8-piece, or I would say maybe louder music. So we're going to expand on more events, less number of people in those musicals. So we are up to about 110 events this summer, which is really way ahead of what we usually book this time of the year. So that's good news. And then also on top of that, we've been working with the city. So Lancer and the city have been working with a design firm on potentially reconfigurations and improvements for the pavilion space. And our goal is, our goal in such a large facility, and the constraints there and some of the operational issues that we've had in past with working in such a large facility and building, because there's so many parts to it. We're going to work on better flow to the building and also define the spaces from a public's view. So given more opportunity for public space during programming. And then we're also going to help redesign our kitchen. As you know, we inherited a kitchen that I would like to say works, but unfortunately, from a operations, it's just the flow of the food and where it's positioned and the equipment that we have needs to be enhanced furthermore. So our goal is to kind of bring back sort of that operational flow, so we can keep and continue to enhance the menu for larger, groups that are coming to these musicals. And then also improve in the restrooms. And one of the most biggest challenges that we have is each restroom is kind of based either outside down below or upstairs from the main level. And there's no pathway in between that offers a quick stop for people. And so we're looking to enhance both those opportunities as well. Now, with that said, this is a major hall, so we're really just in the beginning stages. But I wanted to mention that we're very far out from this in the foreseeable future, and we're just starting to explore it. So right now, it's a few renderings on paper, but more importantly, as we get closer to our timetable, we can start sharing those with the community District 10, Ward 5, and other community members as we get further along. The other few things that we're doing is we're going to expand a picnic program, so people can stop by within the community or neighborhood and purchase picnic options. That way they can enjoy a picnic along the parkways or up top near the water fountain area and things like that. And then, as you maybe have seen already, we also expanded our outdoor patio service on the south side of the building there, versus in the front, which gives a much more public opportunity for people just as they're walking by, or they want to stop and get some water for their puppies as they're walking through, or just enjoy a quick snack outside as they walk the park area. And so I open it up for any questions or comments, or but those are our 2023 plans.
Yeah, that's great, Tony. Thank you so much. Can I just double check, who is the manager now?
So we unfortunately went through a change here, and Tim Hermie is no longer the acting general manager, and Mike Renner is fulfilling that position until we find the right person.
Okay. Got it. I think it's, we like to make sure that we've got those touch points with who's actually like at the facility. If there are issues, I know in the past sometimes we've got, people who want to talk about noise, or, if there's weeds that are overgrown or something like that. And so it's good for us to have a contact there that we can make sure we pass along that information, and that we can be a kind of a helpful channel for folks as they just work through some of those questions that they might have as they interact with the facility there.
Yeah, there is an email on our website, dockandpedal.com.
Okay.
And that actually goes to myself, including the on-site general manager and the executive chef. And so all three of us get those emails, and the phone calls go directly to the site.
Okay.
So if anything ever comes up, that's the best way to call or email us.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So questions for Tony specifically?
I don't know if it's a question, but a comment. The range from low price, drop-in quick snacks that you could keep the kid from whining, to the really nice sit and have an evening snack around friends is a good scope to blend in, whether it's ice cream or whether it's I really like some of your suggestions of what you're doing to the menu, but
Yeah, thank you for that. And just to further that, we're adding a lot more shareable appetizers for people that just want to come down and kind of share an experience. And so we think that that's going to be a great thing. And plus, I also left out, and I'm sorry, we're also doing a added cocktail, fun experience on some of the musicals outdoors. So more to come on the menu, but we're going to have fun with it.
Does that mean that there's like that little bar that's just outside of the doors, is that going to be back in service at some point?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Nice.
I think I got a margarita there last year
Yeah.
at one of the events. Tony, is the any of the changes that I know are a ways off, would anything affect that lakefront area down by the ice cream shop, or would we expect any changes to the building design down in that area?
Well, we're not taking anything off the table. I would say short term, no changes. Long term, I envision there being some opportunities there with some additional local vendors and utilizing that space better with the flow, because right now there's a disconnection between the front of the pavilion, Dock and Paddle, and the backside of Como, and we need to bring those together. So yes, long term, yes, short term, no.
Is long-term like 5 years? You know, you're just starting sketches now, or would it be less than that, do you think?
I sit on this group with Tony. I think that this is very, very much throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Okay.
Like we're in throwing spaghetti at the wall stage. I would not anticipate like anything like this would be, if you're talking about making changes to a large public building, there is a lot of
Red
not
tape?
just work and not just consultation, but then also fundraising.
Yep.
To make something like this happen. And so I think at this point we are just kind of experimenting with what might even be on the table.
Mhm.
And so I would not expect any large changes in the next 5 years.
One more menu question. As somebody who works a stone's throw from the dock and paddle, but also on behalf of the residents who work from home these days, are you considering any greatly expanded coffee options at the dock and paddle?
Coffee as in like an espresso program, similar to like a Starbucks or something like that. Yeah, we've entertained it. We've entertained it because we want to be a one-stop shop, sort of between a community breakfast and / come on and enjoy just a quick bite. Now, when we first were open, we had tried to do espresso down below on the Como Lake, espresso and ice cream. In the morning walkers, it just didn't lend to the local Starbucks brand, but that doesn't mean that we won't try something down in the future. It just won't be this year, more than likely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Once you open up those hours of operations to an earlier morning, you're dependent on making sure that it works, with your labor force. And right now, I feel like we're in a really good position this year with our labor force. I just have another month to make sure that we're good. Yeah.
And what are your hours currently?
Right now, we just opened up our summer hours. Let me just double check. Sorry, I don't want to say something that. So we went from Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then Saturday and Sundays, 9 to 9 p.m.
Tony, it's Jonathan. Expand a little bit more on what your changes that you're going to be doing to the music program. As far as going to a smaller group, are we talking about less bands and more singer-songwriter kind of thing, different genres, or what are you guys doing?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Smaller bands is local musicians, people that are wanting to come in that have a smaller following versus like a larger band where they have a bigger following, and it's, bigger bands bring bigger, louder music. And our goal and our commitment is to find that balance within what we feel is acceptable and not acceptable. And in past, we've had larger bands and DJs for private events, and we've maneuvered our policies around, those private events versus, local musicians. So to give you a little insight, I would say 98% of these events that we're doing are much more low-key musical bands than large bands at all. Now we'll have a few one-offs, that, but I feel really good that we've done a superb job in maintaining and managing that throughout the years. Because as you know, we work on our calendar a year out. So when you're in the year-end calendar, you've already booked all your bands, 12 months ago, and you've made commitments and obligations and contracts and agreements. I think we're in a far better position than we ever have been, improving that. And also, we no longer will be allowing music until 10 o'clock for private events. We went to 9 o'clock.
No, the change in the diversity of the music over the time that you guys have been in is greatly improved. We use it a lot. There was a lot of people down there this weekend for the Irish
Yeah,
thing. That would be one of the bigger band or one of the bigger things I would think, but it was packed.
Yeah.
And with half the people dancing, and it was a fun afternoon, so.
yeah, we think we have a great, and it's online too. All of our events are online and posted, so we'll continue to add a few more because we have room for another 15, I think. So we'll keep growing that list.
And last question, are you going to be then using the outside as more than just drinks, but a grab and go kind of thing as well too, that you can take to the table, or food still inside?
Food is primarily still inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony, I actually had a note to ask you about your online calendar, because I try and keep an eye on it for our weekly newsletter, and I feel like it's not very filled out yet compared to this time last year. Am I missing a page on the website, or is it not all on there yet?
It might not all be on there. I know that we had, oh yeah, we've got, we have a few more musicals and theater groups that are finalizing their dates. And before we go public with what we currently have, we want to make sure that we book them first. So it's not 100% up to date.
Right, I'm only seeing a single event in June. I don't know if I need to clear my cache or something. I don't know how to ask this.
No, I think there might be something wrong actually on our website.
Well, all right. Well, I brought it to your attention now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll look into this, but no, we've got full events during June, 100% positive.
Yeah, I assumed you did, especially based on what you've been saying in the meeting, but I didn't know if it was because of the management turnover or something that the website hadn't been updated yet. But I guess I'll bother you sooner next year.
It will be up and running here real quick, trust me.
Thank you.
Other questions for Tony? Okay, now so Tony, if we could keep you here with us, don't leave us quite yet, because I think that we're interested in this this kind of comprehensive conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael John to talk a little bit about some of the things rattling around on your end.
Cool. Thank you. I'll just kind of back off of the longer term future improvements to say that what I've seen so far in the first pass of the designs really, as I'm sure you know, Maggie, right, it really was trying to get at how do we make the public have access and give the opportunity for these blended events, which Lancer does really well over at City House. So they kind of have a sense of how that works and actually make it possible for them to serve sort of both sides of the building, if you will, right? So a lot of the things that we want as customers from them just are not possible from a staffing standpoint until some of those structural changes are made. But that's what's most exciting to us at the Conservancy is kind of really participating in an effort that's going to meet these, I wouldn't even say competing, but complementary use and sort of needs for the pavilion. So I was first kind of, before I got drawn into the longer range conversation, I was in a conversation with Shevik about the community desire, which, as I learned, is a desire on the part of our Parks and Rec operations team to replace the seating in the pavilion. one nice thing about those light benches is they're really easy to move around. The downside is they're really easy to move into the lake. Operations, is stretched. I think they only get so much attention for remaining painted because operations is housed at Como. So it's quick for them but they have so many competing demands for maintenance. So what I'm envisioning, and if it's possible for me to share, I have just a quick document with a couple images on.
Yeah, I think you should be able to.
Great, here it is. So I've been looking at a couple of different options. So far, these are the best. Trying to manage, manage an aesthetic piece, manage a maintenance piece, where to get us something, all of these recycled plastic, are by the yard kind of products, won't need the ongoing maintenance. I had a good conversation with Tom Hagel in operations. So one of the reasons I list the weight, right, is we're kind of guessing at the weight of those benches that exist. But he really was thinking that, like 100 pounds is about as much as you'd want a 6-foot bench to weigh, for it to be maneuverable by a couple of people, staff or members of the public. So the second option, which is a little bit heavier than that, but kind of looking at this kind of product to replace the benches there. And then kind of once we have the benches, we would look at the tables and other things. And there's quite a lot of benches there. I have the exact number in other notes. It's something like 260-ish. So, by the time we're cost, delivery, and then would all need to be put together by the operations team, and then creating a little bit of a margin to cover the fundraising cost of doing the campaign, that, they're coming in around, depending on how much money if we want this project to make, to raise some additional funds for any additional purpose, right, towards the longer term work on the pavilion. Or, I tell you, with our deferred maintenance issues in operations, I'm a real big fan of setting some money aside. So if there's a quick, we need to replace 20 benches, it's not this, let's go around and find the money situation. So I'm trying to target a campaign where these would be about $1,000 each, to then for community members to purchase and have dedicated to folks. Now that we manage the bench and tree dedication program on behalf of the city, and are actually marketing it a little bit. They didn't market it at all. In fact, they made it really hard to find out how to participate, which was not their intent. But so the little bit of marketing we're doing, of course, there's just huge interest in, the whole lake could just be around full of blacks, and we still wouldn't meet the demand. I think at this kind of price point, we would get more, businesses, nonprofits, individual community members, and families able to participate. But 260 some benches is still a lot. So, I want to talk back to, we might have to think a little bit about, what if, it could also be a phased-in campaign where, we're happy to sell as many as possible, but we'd like to get the first 100, right? Like that, see how it goes. That I want to be sensitive to the timing and the thought process for these longer range changes that would affect perhaps how much public seating we need for a single event out there. That's kind of where I am in the thinking. This could be, so I guess I'll stop there and ask for questions, which could range from, I hate both of these benches, what would that campaign look like, or just any thoughts you have on this effort? Because it really came, I've been out there and I see, there's a need for this, but stronger when it comes from you all on behalf of the community. Like, community members really want to see this upgraded and something that works better for everybody.
Okay, a couple questions. Are the benches for just inside the pavilion outdoor area, or would they be like around the pavilion and or around the park?
These could be permanently anchored, but the idea is that these are just the movable pieces that are in and immediately around the pavilion, sort of like the way they're used now.
Okay, so like just inside the
Yeah, the
gated
promenade
area and stuff
benches.
like
Right.
that.
And I think, yeah, longer term, you know, with this bigger improvements to the pavilion, you know, then we could look at, is there a distinctive kind of exterior bench that's immediately around there? But yeah, but that was kind of my starting point, was the 260 some benches that exist on the pavilion terrace right now.
Second one, I like the first one much better than the
Yeah.
second one.
Me too.
And then I know the state fair has a, you know, buy a bench program thing. So how would these compare to theirs? Theirs are metal painted, and I think they store them all the time too in the winter. But the price point, that might just be something to compare. You know, what the price points are there, since we're so close to the state fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will check that out. If it's not immediately available online, I know plenty of folks who work over and on the board and who bought benches. Paired with the dedicating a permanent bench, like around, you know, like along Mississippi River Boulevard or along the lake or somewhere else. So the Como Zoo and Conservatory, Como Friends manages that handful of benches, and they're at the $5,000 price point. It's for new. Our program across parks is $1,500 to dedicate an existing bench. So really the new expense is the purchase and installation of the plaque. And then it goes up to $3,500 for refurbishing a bench. So again, there's a bench there, it just needs some TLC, and then we add the plaque. And then a brand new bench actually brought down the price from what the city had been doing. Their thing was they wanted more margin, because this was the fund for how they bought a stock of benches for when there's sudden needs across the system. And I was like, well, you're not selling very many. So if we do better volume at a slightly low, at a price that's more in line with what you can get, then, and that's been proving true. So I replaced the benches this year through that program for operations, so that they can respond to that. So yeah, our price points for the other permanent benches, $1,500 to $5,000. The big change we've made on that from the previous program, which didn't ever say, is at a time limit, that they're a 10-year dedication and they can be renewed at a less expensive thing, you know, because part of it is, you know, 50 years from now, if that bench is still here, it's going to need TLC and that ongoing dedication, and also just keep it current, right? We don't want to live in a cemetery. We want generation of Como Park friends to be able to their name on something, or continue to honor someone in their family, that kind of thing. But that's a really good point to check out what the fair is doing.
The fair, I just pulled it up. A recognition bench in the state fair is $2,500.
Okay.
And those are those, you know, the
Mesh
like
back.
dipped metal
Yeah.
that have a name in the back of them and then a little plaque on it. Yep, and then so those, yeah, looks like, and then if you want a table, it's $5,000. So
I think if we come in at like $1,000 or $1,200, depending on what the final costs are for everything, that's kind of a nice number. I mean, we could then potentially, you know, again, depending on how much, what our purpose would be for funds raised in excess of cost to do the program. Which again would be dedicated to the pavilion or to Como, and I really think, you know, based on conversations from several months ago about other park projects or in other parks that District 10 would like to do, you know, just a further conversation about kind of what's our fundraising strategy there. And I think just as partners, we can do so much more. What I'm kind of picturing for a marketing plan, besides, in addition to online, is sort of packaging this opportunity with, there's three sculptures in at least 3 in Como Park that aren't part of the zoo and conservatory. A sculpture dedication program. So there's Schiller, there's Ibsen, and there's the Schiffman Fountain that was recently restored. And part of our work with city is raising funds for conserving these, particularly the bronzes, the public works, because they need annual care, and every few years they need deep annual care, and it's just not covered by operations. And kind of say, here's the opportunities in Como Park for putting your name on something, giving a dedicated gift. So that with, I'm a big fan of, don't get in your message, but give one stamp and give people a menu of opportunities to participate.
I have another bench comment or question. I was out in a different state, and Excel had a bench that had solar on the back, so you could charge your things. So that might be an outdoor bench that there might be a grant fund through Excel, but they had a little plaque on it, and I can get it to Maggie to get, I took a picture of it. But yeah, they had a solar section and then the bench, and then you could charge. So that might be something around the lake, outside, something like that.
Right. And also a good thing to think about for the longer term pavilion upgrades, right? Is there a charging station in the pavilion? Yeah, just, why not? It's all imaginary money at the moment. Let's add more things. But
Throwing spaghetti.
Yes, exactly.
Would you anticipate the city contributing to this at all or not?
I'm a big believer that park improvement projects should begin and or end with the city, and the bigger they are, the city probably has to be in at both ends of it. Again, this has been on some listed operations for years and years to do something about percentages. Given the priority to other projects that are more geared towards expanding equity across the park system, we'd have to be kind of realistic. But I think there'll be a way, especially if there's some dollars that can be a challenge grant or something, or even if they say, you know what, we're just going to absorb the cost of, because if 260 benches got delivered and needed to be put together, that's staff hours to dedicate. And they've been pretty good working with the Conservancy about, we'll just, some projects, we'll absorb that. And that has a real cost, as anyone of us, particularly Tony, can tell you, different staff from one thing to another means it's costing you money. So, but it would be nice to get a little bit of cash.
Yeah. On a similar note, I have no doubt that Lancer contributes untold amounts of money to upgrades and improvements in maintaining the pavilion, but another marketing strategy could be a more public side of that and show that Lancer is doing like a matching towards some of these fundraising efforts or something like that. Not to put you on the spot, Tony.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah, I think that, and there's some, Councilmember Brenmoen is really wanting to use all of her remaining dedicated STAR funds for the pavilion. Which are, so the first piece, we partnered on the request for the new system at the pavilion, and so that might be another, right? We might just get a couple of resources to put together as a match. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. The more names that are on that, I would say on the larger, not that it couldn't be part of this bench scheme, but on the longer term plans, one of the things the Conservancy is working closely with the city on this year is to have a really coherent sort of naming and sponsorship opportunity across the whole park system. It really only existed at the zoo and conservatory, which makes sense. It's the kind of space where you see sponsorships, and they, it's the kind of facility that demands that. On the one hand, the city has this long-term fear that suddenly, there'll be big signs that say, "Welcome to the XL Como Lakeside Pavilion." I wish people were lined up to give us money and put their name on all 182 parks, but I think the bigger problem is we're not asking for it because we don't have a coherent way for longtime Como area businesses to Oh, yeah, something discreet that honors us, that again, with time limited, like I really like a 10 or a 15 year and with a renewal option, to just allow some businesses and corporations to feel like they're justified and using their philanthropic and maybe some marketing dollars to help get a project done. And what stood in our way before is by the time they think of it, it's like, there's nothing ready to go to have that conversation. So that's what we want to come out of the gate with this year, is just having a coherent menu of opportunities so that when any of these projects are coming up, we're starting with those conversations. Rather than like North End Community Center, when it was like, oh, no, it's not going to get over the finish line. What money can you find? And I'm like, yeah, it would have been easier 2 years ago if we'd started with that premise, because we could have gotten a community center or a gym named, so.
Question about the breadth of the Parks Conservancy. What
Sure.
about areas like Midway Parkway or the, other maybe Wheelock Parkway areas that are not resident, they don't belong to the homeowner, they're in the center area, and linking it to benches, like Midway Parkway does have a commemorative bench at Pascal and Midway Parkway for one of the former community members, and that was the old style cement with little pebbles, and then the nice heavy wood or plastic or whatever through it. So with those areas, there, especially with the Como Neighborhood History Project, we had a goal to have a public art piece of work on Midway Parkway so that we could acknowledge some of the racial covenants and that were in the Midway area. Plus, there's a lot of art like at Midway Parkway and Hamlin, that it's a nice piece of art that came from one of the art projects 2005 or something. There's absolutely no labeling. You don't know what the project was. So labeling of other pieces of art that are around the neighborhood and or other parks in Como specifically, like Tilden and Stinson, that don't even have a naming, you don't even know those parks are Tilden and Stinson.
Right, yeah, they don't even have the sign. And yeah, I'd gotten the pricing to kind of get back to you guys. Yeah, and I think that, so in answer to the first part of the question, it's hard for the public to tell because parks also takes care of land that is not parkland, depending on what the history is with whoever owns it, usually Public Works, sometimes the county or some other public agency. And we're really here, we've grown to say, thinking to say, we're really here for public space that's used for the community benefit. And Works has approached us. We're about to sign an MOU to sort of be their conservancy as well, because they have, they have a few volunteer programs. People want to plant like a roundabout or something, right? And have volunteers maintain it. And to us, it's all the same kind of work. It doesn't, as long as it's publicly owned. So that having that agreement in place with Public Works, and on the art specific side, I will say I'm really interested. It's fascinating to me because about 80 works of art across public land in the city fall on the list that Park Operations has our conservators assess every year for condition. And the more I find are all these pieces that should be on it but aren't. That's why, who knows how the first list got developed, what's feeding into it. And then I had a first meeting with Planning and Economic Development, Public Works, and Parks, because some of like the percent for our program is going to Nicole Goodman's department, and she's creating a half-time, I think at least, position. And that's kind of how things were in previous jobs she's held, and she's got a lot of expertise there. But we realized that all the departments need to get together and what is actual collection? How do we address the signage issue and the care issue? Because then it's all because each department has stuff that they're responsible for that their crews aren't specialized for, that tasked with the budget or the expertise. So I think that's where we're coming in to say, let's step back and just make this a little more coherent. So that'll take some time, but it's good that the conversation's underway. I think in the short term, we can look at, we can be a partner and sort of looking at any, kind of any of those, whether it's care of an object or signage for something. We'd be great to work with you. Because what I found now, as Shevik knows, I began knowing nothing, and now I just know a little bit more than nothing in this realm. But I think really the way it works best with the Conservancy, if probably at all, really, is that groups like yours and the neighbors, you're the eyes on the street, so we don't have to know everything. We just have to know who you are, and you have to know to call us and say, how do we do this? And we'll say, no, let's figure it out. So bring us those things. That'd be great. Yeah.
Great, because what we're looking at is with things going on, we don't want to do a one-off. We're trying to look at how we can look at the whole neighborhood and make it sort of cohesive. So it's not like, oh, let's get a sign there right away. Well, it hasn't had a sign for 20 years. Another 2 or 3 years will be fine, but we'd like cohesion on it. And so we're starting to ask people those questions. So just like you're starting to look at the pavilion and potential, we're trying to see how can we delineate Como neighborhood different from Como Park and different from the zoo, because the neighborhood's very interesting also.
Cool.
And I think that the District 10 Como Community Council relationship with organizations like yours, Michael John, that's been missing in the past, where we have kind of, I think the district councils in many ways are reinventing themselves all the time and what their role is. And so it can be easy to, over time, be kind of myopic that our role is just connected to the city, as opposed to, nope, it's connected to all of these other organizations throughout the community as well, and that we don't just carry information and plan parties, that we also can help with like larger scale projects like this.
And I know on the city side, right, they hate to be in the position that they so often are of every time community calls and asks, it's like we don't have any for that.
Yeah.
So we're the ones who say, neither do we, let's go figure out how to get money. And so much of what's been missing, right, is in every neighborhood is the opportunity for community members to contribute in some cohesive way. And that's, I think, where we, not that we don't want the big grants and stuff like that, we certainly do. But, everyone, there's greater ownership when everyone has a chance to have some skin in the game. Right? So.
Yeah, and I think in the context of, knowing that there's exploration around what the pavilion looks like, the 10, 20, 30-year mark from now, it's like a good opportunity to kind of like see who's out there and wants to be involved, and who has visions and ideals that they want to be able to support in a project like this.
Sure.
And I had a couple things that I don't remember if it was you, Michael John, or somebody from Parks and Rec, but when I first started asking about the pavilion benches in disrepair, I was told that it was actually on Parks and Rec's like maintenance docket last year to like repaint the benches or something, but it got cold too fast or faster than they could get to it. Do you know if that's still on their docket, or is this new plan kind of deferring that from happening with the current benches?
No, it's still on their docket. Yeah, I meet once a month with operations, and yeah, it's still on their list. Now that they're getting past a lot of the flooding.
I suppose.
Always something.
The water's going back up now.
I know. I asked Tom Hagel, he's worked here for 12 years, and I said, how many 50-year floods have you had? He's like, only 4. Like,
you may know, I worked on the river for 16 years, and my boss had been there for 40 years. Gus down at the Paddleford, you may even know him, but he said when he started, there was a flood over Harriet Island every 10 years, and in the past 15 years, it's been like every 3 years. It's like undeniable change. And the other thing I had was, we were talking about signs on things. I've seen a couple community members mention there's like an artistic bee mansion right where Nagasaki turns to Huron, And apparently that used to have like a plaque with what it was, and that is fallen or been removed or something. And so I don't know if it's already on your radar, but somebody may reach out to you about that.
That would be
I think it was
great.
a Public Art St. Paul thing.
Okay, I noticed it when I went around the park, but I didn't know whose project it was, so I will take the call when it comes.
I've actually been waiting for somebody to email me and tell me that I have some maintenance contract to replace some stuff. So
Yeah,
I'll reach out to you if that happens.
great.
If we can figure who the B Hotel mogul is, so we need to go track down for maintenance. Well, I mean, there's been other, before the parking lot was redone, there was that native demonstration garden just to the north side of the pavilion that D10 helped maintain for a period of time, and then that, I think it had lived its natural life. And I think we were somewhat glad to see that get roped into the larger renovation plans for that parking lot space.
Yeah, so I know I wanted to mention one off-topic thing, and that is Pat, who you know well, I think, as a Como volunteer, park volunteer. And she speaks so highly of the organization and of Shevik. She is the 2023 Parks Volunteer of the Year. So we honor her at the Party for the Parks on June 21st, and I'll make sure Shevik has all the details.
Yeah. That's Pat. She does the gardens right outside the streetcar station.
Okay. And she lives right across the street?
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed you had a volunteer spotlight on Allison Gottsman as
Yep.
well, and she does a lot of work with us in some of our garden spaces as well.
Yep.
Kind of an interesting gardening piece is that Como North, or the north part, north of the lake of Como, is gardens and greenhouses and truck gardens that they call them, and or truck farms. And one of our history folks, she's the fourth generation living on the land there, and they used to have peony farms and things like that. So some of the idea of heirloom, what were the plants back when Como was originally first populated by farmers, might be kind of some interesting things to incorporate around the buildings or something, but reaching back to that history of what was sold here through all the garden rows and stuff.
Oh,
Might
yeah.
be a nice idea.
Cool. Thank you.
So what else, what other questions do folks have, or while we have Tony and Michael John here, what else can we ask while we've got them?
I might have one other signage question. Around the lake, and I haven't seen it lately because I haven't walked around it, but there had been signs about, you have walked 1 mile, you have walked 1.5 miles, around the lake. So it's again, signage, marketing, things like that. But one of the things that our neighbors talked a lot about during COVID was people were out walking, and, signage, walking paths that might add a wellness factor to the, smaller ones, not huge things, but that might be it, again, as the whole signage piece is going and being discussed in parks, how you could add pieces about how far you've walked, or different maps and exercise-related things.
Yeah, there's been a couple folks over the years who have asked about those kind of like outdoor gym spaces, like a pull-up bar. And I know that some of those people see them in more southern cities and wish for them in Minnesota, and the weather just isn't conducive to that. But I think that's those types of things. Like, again, I do think that we are in a spaghetti throwing phase of kind of what this area of the park looks like over the next decade. And so I think all of those are things we can at least entertain.
Oh, for sure.
All right. Well, it's just about 7 o'clock, so I'm going to say thank you so much to our guests tonight. I think we, Tony, as always, look forward to having Dock and Paddle in the neighborhood and continuing to help both idea generate and problem solve with your organization as we go through this season. I want to also take a minute to just say thank you to Tony for a lot of the work that he has done that is invisible to most of us, and that is dealing with some of those sound issues, because it's not as simple as somebody hears more music than they want to hear outside of their house. It is talking to every organization that comes through. It's trying to police noise. It's trying to examine sound systems as they are. And I just want to really highlight that Tony has been, I think, a compassionate ear for folks that are struggling, and a really good problem-solving partner as we try to figure out how to make sure that the lake is a nice place for everybody. So thank you for that, Tony. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having us, and this is gonna be our year, Maggie.
Yes, yes.
Zero. Yep, 0 complaints because it's perfect.
Exactly. I'm gonna write it down right here. Tony says no complaints this year.
My record is getting better every year. Okay, so we're seeing some good progression, but
Maybe
yeah,
that's
thank
one
you.
of the things that we fundraise for, is like a big board to put on the
Yeah.
wall, and it's the flip down number of days since a since a complaint. I don't know, those bathrooms will never be your particular problem, but you'll still get those calls. So, all right, anything else for our guests tonight? All right, thank you so much, Michael, John, and Tony. We appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.